So today we're going to be talking about the distributive property, which is something you actually should have learned before. We're going to review what the distributive property is real quick, and you can see it in red on the screen here. The distributive property says when I have a number outside of a set of parentheses, and in those parentheses I have two things being added, normal order of operation says I would do the b plus c first, and then I would take that and multiply by a. What the distributive property says is you can do that, or you can get the same answer by multiplying the a times the b and the a times the c, and then adding those two things together. And it also works if you have subtraction in there. So in other words, if I had like 2 times 5 plus 6, the normal order of operations says I would do the 5 plus 6 first, and I would get 2 times 11, or 22. The distributive property says what I can also do and get the same answer is do 2 times 5, which would be, of course, 10, and then do 2 times 6, which of course would be 12, and then add those together, and 10 plus 12 gives me 22. And yeah, I see these are the same thing. Okay, and that's what distributive property tells us, is we can take this number outside and multiply it by each thing inside. And when you add those, you'll get the same answers if you follow the order of operations the normal way. Okay, now it doesn't mean a whole lot for us right now, because if it's just numbers, who cares how we do it? If we do this distributive property, or if we do it with the order of operations. But it comes in handy when we have expressions that involve variables, like these ones here. And we can simplify these a little bit if we use the distributive property. So the distributive property says, as we said on the last page, I can get this same answer by taking this 3 and multiplying it by the x, and I write 3 times x as just 3x. Excuse me, right? Anytime I have a number and a variable next to each other, it means multiply. I don't have to put a dot or anything in between them. I just put them next to each other. And then I can add to that whatever I get when I do 3 times 4. Well, 3 times 4 is obviously 12. And so 3 times, in parentheses, x plus 4 would be the same as 3 times x plus 3 times 4, or 12. Okay? So I do the same thing down here. I can take the 5 and multiply it by the y. That's going to give me 5y. I can take the 5, multiply it by the 3. That's going to give me 15. And it was minus. It's going to still be minus. Okay? Now, this is a little bit different because you can see there's a negative out front here. So what I'm actually multiplying by is negative 2. So negative 2 times a b, that's still going to be negative 2b. I still just put them next to each other. We got to be really careful here, though. We have to be careful with signs. I have a negative 2, and when I'm doing this multiplication, I can really think of this as being a positive, meaning positive 7. So a negative 2 times a positive 7 gives me a negative 14. So I can write that as minus 14. When we're doing this algebra, when we're distributing, combining like terms, things like that, the subtraction and negative really mean the same thing, and adding and positive really mean the same thing. So a negative times a positive is going to give me a negative, which is really important when I have this negative out front to pay attention to my signs. So a negative 6 times c is going to give me negative 6c. Obviously, I just put them next to each other like we said before. But here, I have a negative 6 times. Now I can think of this subtraction as meaning negative 4. So negative 6 times negative 4 is a positive. Negative times a negative is a positive. 6 times 4 is 24. That's it. Okay? Negative times negative, positive. Negative times positive, negative. That's where we get if this is subtraction or addition. Up here we had positive times a negative, we got a negative. Okay, so just remember when you're doing this, when we're into algebra, we're combining like terms, we're distributing things like that. The negative sign, subtraction, basically are meaning the same thing. Addition and positive signs are really meaning the same thing. So carefully try these ones. Make sure you're paying attention to signs, and make sure that the number in front is being multiplied by both things inside. Biggest mistake people make is they'll take one like this first one here, and they'll just make it 3x plus 4. They forget to multiply the 3 times the 4. Okay? This is wrong. It should not be a 4 there. You have to multiply the 3 times 4. So be careful with that, and be careful with signs. Do these 4 and bring them into class tomorrow.